Hello everyone, Ian Cold here with another Over Yandere Devlog, and this past week I've been working on some big changes. So I think I've mentioned all of these changes at one point or another in some previous devlogs, but now I'm at the stage in the game where I'm able to work on new features and things like that and really expand what I have there. So the first thing I've done this week is I've made some changes to the E to interact message that pops up above interactables, so NPCs, flowers, things like that. So this message said E to interact for everything: NPCs, bushes, garbage cans, music, everything. And that doesn't really make sense. It's a very little thing, but just something that was eating away in the back of my mind. Also, that E to interact stayed there while you were talking to someone, which kind of seemed odd because you're talking to somebody. That E to interact makes you think you can interact with them, but you're already interacting with them. I don't know, something like that. It just seemed off to me. So this week I've gone and I've fixed that. So I've customized the E to interact message for pretty much everything. So some NPCs, E to talk, different things, E to admire, E to contemplate, E to read, to listen. Different NPCs are different things. For instance, with the cafe lady, it's E to gab, because that's the kind of dialogue she has. Or, E to admire for some flowers, E to smell for others, based on the dialogue they have, and various things like that. So I feel like this change just adds a little bit of extra polish to the game. It just makes a little bit more sense, and it's something you might notice if you play the game long enough and compare it to others. Wait, why am I interacting with a person? You mean I'm talking to them? Something like that. So there's just that extra little bit of polish there for the free roam and NPCs and interactables, and I'm glad to have that there and clear that up, because that was eating away in the back of my mind. The next major change is the sprint meter. I've talked about this and said, this is a want, not a need right now. And now we're at that stage where we're doing a few wants. So I've now added a sprint meter. So you will run out of sprint after so long. And if you go all the way till you completely run out of sprint, there's about a 10-second wait until you can use the sprint again. And if you stop before that, your sprint will start recovering a bit faster than that. Also, if you hit anything while sprinting, so a wall or run into an interactable object, then you will lose your sprint and it'll be 10 seconds till you can use it again. So the sprint is fairly generous, because really the point of the sprint is just to help people get around the fairly large free roam without feeling like they have to walk everywhere, or it takes 30 seconds to just go talk to someone for a quest. So that's really what the sprint is for. And with the meter, it just makes it so that you can't just dash everywhere. You should use it sparingly. It's still pretty good. You can get from the middle point all the way to the right side or the left side. So you could still get around. It's still useful. It's just a little more limited, and it makes a little more sense. I mean, your character is a human and not a super athlete, so they can run, but, not more than, say, 100 yards. And the last change is I've added music to the loading or the wait screen, just to make things feel like they're not taking as long. At least there's something there. It's not just dead silence. And also I've made a change to the menu tips, so the loading tips, where the randomization is better. So they had randomization, but I noticed that sometimes it would pick the same tip twice, which would kind of seem a bit odd, or, hey, I've already seen this, or you might see the same loading tip 3 or 4 times across one playthrough, and that just seemed a bit odd when there's a whole bunch more loading tips than just that. So I've now set it up that it will use all the loading tips first before it repeats. So again, that's something pretty minor. You would only really notice that if you played the game, maybe a couple times. But again, it's just another little level of polish just to tidy things up, and something that's kind of been bugging me that I'm now able to take the time, set aside, and squish it. The one thing I wanted to mention is having to stop sprint when you collide with something has now made the running track a lot harder, and it's also introduced a bug with the running track that I'll be looking to fix up sometime next week. But overall, I feel the sprint changes are needed, and it just makes a little more sense. It communicates to you, how much sprint you have, and so forth. So those are things I've been working on this week, and I don't have all that much left that I've really wanted to do as far as solid features go. Then it's really just testing things up, fixing things up, and waiting for the art to come in. So that's what I'll be working on for the next little bit, and some art is in the works. It's close. I hope to have it for you next week. Until next time, I'm Ian Cold. Thank you for watching.